Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Officing of Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, and Chukwu Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State, and Managing Director of Mark Foley Limited. But before we have our panelists, the Naira last Wednesday depreciated to 710 Naira to $1 on the parallel market, compared with the 670 Naira to $1 it closed the previous day. Economists say, in fact, it's even worse as of today. In the past few days, the Naira exchange rate against the dollar has thus been on the decline on the parallel market. High petrol subsidy, massive oil theft, and speculation by currency traders continue to push the Naira to a record low. Despite this, Minister of Finance and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, is reported to have said within the week that Nigeria's economy was doing better under the Buhari administration than previous governments. Meanwhile, the Senate has invited Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele over the depreciation of the Naira. The decision of the upper legislative chamber followed a motion by Senator Olubunmi Adetunbi. The Senate also asked the Apex Bank to stop the rapid decline of the value of the Naira.
The Senate further notes that the CBN should take new measures to curb foreign scarcity and address the sliding rate of Naira exchange. Accordingly, the Senate resolves, 1, to call on the Central Bank of Nigeria to urgently intervene to stop the rapid decline in the value of the Naira vis-a-vis the dollar and other international currencies. 2, that the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions should conduct an assessment of the Central Bank intervention funds and the declining value of the Naira to come up with sustainable solutions.
Nobody will come to Nigeria and invest as at today. No one. No mad person will come to Nigeria and invest. Reason being that we have so many security challenges. And all these variables are dependent on the security of this nation. As long as we are bleeding and as long as we have these issues, I think we will just continue to go around in cycles. So the best way to go about it is to first address the issue of economy, where security, where every other variable depend on.
One of the things that is debilitating the Nigerian economy, it is just too wide, and unfortunately, it only creates room for a few Nigerians to make tremendous profits out of this imbalance.
Joining us now to appraise the rather woeful performance of the Naira against the dollar, what the numbers are saying, and the likely outlook in the coming weeks and months is Johnson Chukwu, a financial markets analyst and chief executive officer of Cowry Asset Management Company Limited. Hi, Chief. Because I introduced you professionally, but I know you're a high chief. Okay, high chief Johnson Chukwu. What is happening to the Naira? What can we do to save the Naira? How bad is the situation?
What's happening is a calamity that was foretold. It's something we saw coming for the past couple of years, but we decided as a people to do nothing about it. Let's start from what has gone wrong. In your intro, you did mention some of those issues. You talked about the amount we're paying as subsidy. The last report from the minister said we paid about 2.6 trillion naira in subsidy, well as revenues from oil and gas, which is crude, and gas, and liquefied natural gas and others was only 2.39 trillion naira. So we had a shortfall of about 210 billion between the amount we paid as subsidy and the amount we earned in totality from oil. 2, we know that crude production has actually stalled. We're currently producing, in May we produce only 1.024 million barrels. Our open quota currently for the month of August is 1.826 million barrels. If we continue at that rate, we'll be a share of our production quota by about 800,000 barrels a day. Then you also have to deal with the other factors. Are we attracting enough foreign capital? Which the senators have said. In the first quarter of this year, total capital importation into this country was only $1.57 billion for a country of this size, for a country with a GDP of close to more than 450 billion. So what is happening today is a result of the decision we've taken as a people over time. One, to continue subsidy, and therefore import refined petroleum products even beyond our natural consumption, and export part of it to neighboring African countries, subsidizing neighboring African countries. It's a decision we took as a people. Two, we have allowed insecurity to the extent that no rational person, which one of the senators said, no rational person will come and invest in this country, in this economy. So all these things have conspired to lead to a situation where our total foreign currency inflow is significantly below our foreign currency outflow. So, and it's a very simple logic. If the amount of dollar you earn is consistently below the amount of dollar you need to pay, so what happens? You keep borrowing. And at some point, your cost of borrowing will increase. At some point, you will find it difficult to borrow. And then what happens to your currency? As you are making more demand for foreign exchange that you are earning, your reserve will decline, because what you're doing, you are paying for those imports with your reserve. And as you keep depleting your reserve, you will not have enough resources to defend your currency. So even the demand that the Senate had made on the CBN governor to come and tell them how they want to defend the currency, for me, it's I don't know what expensive. He doesn't have the war chest. He has told us as a people that NNPC has not limited dollar for quite some time. Why has NNPC not limited dollar? Because NNPC is spending the entire foreign exchange earnings on subsidizing petroleum products. So if he has spent the entire money to subsidize petroleum products, where will he remit from? So if he has not limited to central bank, what resource does central bank have to defend a currency? Ability to defend your currency, ability to match demand. And like I always say to people, look, for a country the size of our population, there is a minimum consumption we should expect. Our total import in the first quarter of this year was 5.9 trillion naira, of which 50% were for manufactured goods, but 32.2% was for petroleum products, refined petroleum products. Assuming we are refining locally, if we are taking out the subsidy, maybe we would have started refining. If we took out the subsidy maybe 6 years ago, by now local refinery would have sprung up, would have refined locally, and therefore would have saved 32% of the 5.9 trillion naira we spent on importation of PMS, jet fuel, and other petroleum products.
Okay, Chief, I get the point you are making, right? You've talked about subsidy, you've talked about refineries, you've talked about policy. If we would turn that around, what are you recommending as solution? Because I guess that is what the average Nigerian is interested in. What can we do to save the Naira in the immediate term, in the medium term, in the long term, whatever is still possible under this administration?
Okay,
or we should just give up and say we are helpless, overwhelmed.
No leader will ever give up. That's what leadership is all about. Ability to solve problems. So let's start from what, it may not be exactly what you call low-hanging fruit, but the one that is endogenous to us, that's within our control. One, the first number thing the government should do is to improve on crude production. The pipelines are still...
The refineries are down.
No, the crude production, crude, not refined petroleum products.
Okay,
let's even start
crude
from,
oil. Yeah, we can't meet our quota.
Yes, let's even start
quota.
Let's start from that, because in the history of this country, if you remember when Misalignment became president of this country, what happened was there was a lot of breach of pipelines. It was at the height of the agitation by the Niger Delta militants. He moved in, engaged them, even brought them to State House, and was able to do some amitances with them. And what happened? Crude production immediately moved up. So the first thing we look at is those pipelines that are breached, where are they located? Where are the communities that they are located? Find out the community leaders, find out the boys breaching it, engage them, incentivize them. Because clearly the government does not have the capacity for a gun-based strategy. So it has to be by engagement. And then make them promises and fulfill those promises so that they will allow crude production to take place and crude to be transported across the pipelines. So that's number one. And I believe if the government engages effectively with the oil-bearing communities, maybe in the next 2-3 months, will improve materially crude production. So that for me is a immediate answer, because if we restore our production to about 1.8 million barrels, we are not going to find ourselves in this situation. There is no major oil producing country that's having difficulties today. They are all actually smiling to their banks. So that's number one issue.
Oh, no, let's stay with that number one issue. The old NNPC told us that even if we meet our quota, we increase production. It promises no advantage, because the more money we make from the current situation of the spot price going up is of no advantage to Nigeria. What they tell us is that, when Dangote's refinery, 650,000 barrels per month comes up, or per day, was it? Then Nigeria will be in a safe place. So, how promising is that prospect?
Okay, let me put it this way. I did mention earlier that our production, it was about 1.02 million barrels in May. I think about 1.155 million barrels in June. If we increase that to 1.8 million barrels, you are going to have an additional about 650,000 barrels a day production. It does not follow that our demand for refined petroleum product will also increase, because we already have a known demand. You understand what I'm saying? We already have a known quantity of consumption. It wouldn't just go up because you are producing more crude. So whatever incremental production that takes place will be an incremental revenue to the government, will be an incremental cash flow, dollar flow to the government purse. And that will mean that it will first narrow or eliminate the shortfall we have between foreign exchange earnings from crude oil and subsidy. Assuming subsidy remains the same, because you don't expect that subsidy will expand or our consumption of refined product will expand just because our crude production has expanded. Because one is already fixed as is at the current level. So that's the first thing. But even touching on the issue about Dangote refinery, we should know that Dangote refinery is a positive that is being built by Nigeria, but it's not a silver bullet. There are fundamental things we must recognize. Dangote will buy crude from the international crude market at commercial price. Nigeria does not even have enough to supply, to say the domestic requirement, which they have about 450,000 barrels a day. It's not enough to meet the 650,000 barrels demand of Dangote refinery. So certainly Dangote refinery will import refined petroleum. Even if he has to buy from IOCs in the country, he has to pay $1 for it, because they have an alternative market where they will earn $1 for it. So if he does pay $1 for it, then the Nigerian government must pay Dangote refinery dollars to import the refined product from Dangote refinery. Dangote refinery will go bust. So once we pay $1, there will still be an outflow from our foreign reserve. The only difference is that part of the profit that Dangote will be earned by a Nigerian or a Nigerian citizen. Whether he decides to keep it wherever, it doesn't have to, it wouldn't form part of our foreign reserve. So that's by the way. So the issue is that if we, as a people, if the government can take this conversation we're having seriously and engage the communities that bear oil and gas assets, in the next 2 weeks, set up a high-powered federal government delegation, reach out to all those communities. They're not 1,000 communities. And then ensure that you engage in whatever is required, even if it has to be some level of incentive for every barrel that passes through their locality or that is produced in their locality for the meantime. And then what you achieve is that you see improved production. That improved production will earn us higher foreign exchange from crude, and that will boost our foreign reserve and enhance the capacity of the central bank to defend the currency. Without reserve, the central bank is hamstringed in defending the currency. There's nothing they can do.
Okay, I get your point. But look, you are talking about any more revenue with increased crude oil processing and production at a time when national debt service is 119% higher than revenue. So would that make any difference? But to your second point about how this crisis can be addressed.
Okay, we've talked about the first one. The second aspect is the amount we are spending on refined petroleum product. This I'm talking of the short to medium term measures, and then we'll talk of the long term measures. The medium term measure is that we will begin price modulation on refined petroleum product. If we start some form of price modulation, all of us will go through some pain, but we are going to go, what we're witnessing a situation where the roof is collapsing on all of us, we feel comfortable dancing inside the hall. So we would rather take the pains now than to plot the regret curve. And that will mean that the government must decide that we cannot, as a people, afford the price of petroleum product, afford the level of subsidy that we are paying. So if you have some level of price modulation, the price modulation will achieve two things. Consumption will decline. The consumption will decline from two sources. People will no longer be able to be frivolent in the use of fuel, driving around using fuel-guzzling vehicles. And secondly, the volume of refined petroleum product is exported or smuggled out of the country will reduce. Because once you achieve some level of parity between the price of petroleum product in Cameroon, in Niger Republic, in Benin Republic, in Togo, then the quantity Nigerians have to take to those places to smuggle out will reduce. So effectively, the 32% we are spending on refined petroleum product will reduce, maybe to 10%, maybe to 15%. That reduction is of savings. Because for every product we consume here, it's paid with dollars. So that's one of the second factors. Then the third factor, which is the medium-term, the long-term approach, is to structure the economy so that we're a productive economy, so that we can produce, to some extent, some of the goods we consume today. I said 50% of our 5.9 trillion was on finished goods. And look at the size of the population. And for you to achieve that, a couple of things we need to do. We need to improve on the cost of production in the country. We need to improve on the supply of critical productive material, productive resources, such as energy supply, such as transport infrastructure, such as logistic infrastructure, the seaports, the ports, as receptacles for export and import of goods. We need to improve on those things. That I might call the medium to long-term measures. But let's start from the immediate, short-term measure. Improve on crude production. Second thing, reduce the amount we are spending on subsidy by gradually moderating, increasing the price of refined petroleum products. That way, we will achieve two things. We will improve foreign exchange earnings, and we'll also cut down on our foreign currency demand.
Okay, Chief. Well, some of the commentators on this subject have said this is a failure of policy. To what extent is the Naira yo-yoing day after day a failure of policy? Because you recall that the central bank took a number of measures. The central bank encouraged diaspora remittances, right, through a specific policy. The same central bank also introduced measures to reduce the influence of bureau de change, or a group that they call the Aboki FX. But all of that has not helped. The central bank also used ways and means, printing money to shore up forex, to shore up liquidity, up to about 7 trillion naira. Nairametrics tells us. But is this a failure of policy? Where did we get it wrong?
Okay, all the issues I brought up here are all policies. Obviously, your question is tending towards, is it a failure of monetary policies? Because all the questions you asked around monetary policies. Yes. I think we're overburdening monetary policies. We think monetary policies has the way we try to solve even structural problems. What the central bank has been doing has been what they call fire service. Central bank in the past couple of years has been fighting fire and has been trying all sorts of solvents.
I would prefer the word ambulance.
To see
ambulance service.
Okay, so to see how this fire could be fought, the issue of incentivizing remittances. Interestingly, I have actually commented several on some of these issues. Incentivizing remittances. You can only incentivize remittance where the resource is there. If somebody, because that was introduced immediately after COVID, and I said, look, how effective would this be? Most Nigerians, those desperate Nigerians may not have full employment. A lot of economies globally we are struggling. So the possibility that you will incentivize a man who is trying to go back to work to remit money home is, it has to end income first. 2, when he remits the money home, he needs to be sure that the country is safe. Like now, we will see a drastic drop in domestic remittances because of the uncertainty around the political environment. And 3, if you still have a huge gap between the parallel market and the official market, take for instance, you have 420 today against 710. So that is about 310 naira difference. If you tell the person I will pay you 65 naira to remit money or home, why would I take 65 naira when I can get 310 naira? I mean, I must be daft to do that. And even if I'm daft, my wife or my relation will call me to order and say, look, Oga, brother, this doesn't work this way. So the issue of domestic remittances must only happen where there is strong earnings of Nigerians in diaspora and there is some level of minimal difference between the official rate and the parallel market. So that incentive becomes motivating. So that's that. Then on the RT 200, to earn 200 billion naira from export of from non-oil export, the question you ask yourself, which sectors, which products are you going to be exporting? Are those products produced at costs that are competitive with what similar products produced elsewhere in the world? Are they produced at the same quality with similar products produced elsewhere in the world? So you have to compete on quality and on cost. So are you going to export products that those that are made in China and come to Benin Republic are cheaper and landing in Benin Republic, even landing in your home country? It's just not possible. Then you're not producing the same quality. So the issues are, the structural problems have to be dealt by the fiscal authorities. That's when incentive by the monetary policies will be effective. Otherwise, we are overburdening monetary policies and their effectiveness, clearly we have seen that there's a limit to the effectiveness of monetary policies.
Okay, I'm tempted to agree with you. I'm tempted to agree with you that there's a gross misalignment between monetary policy and fiscal policy in Nigeria. And that is at the heart of the problem. But do you think, if you look at all the solutions you have offered, there's still anything that this administration can still do between now and February, May 2023? Or our agony is agony postponed, agony deepened, agony that will worsen?
Well, my take is there are a couple of things the government can do. If the government is determined. This is a government of 200 million people. And I had mentioned the issue of engaging, which they can start tomorrow, Monday. Engage the oil-bearing community. Set up a team like Omar Yaradua did and was able to resolve that issue within a matter of weeks.
Another committee?
It doesn't have to be a committee. It's not a committee to come and judge or come and discuss. It's saying, look, these 5 men and women go to all the oil-bearing communities in Bayelsa, go to oil-bearing communities in Delta, go to the rivers, engage the communities, incentivize them, and so that we have peace.
Really?
2,
what happened to the Economic Advisory Committee?
You see, those are when I say that the failures are the failures of policy. A good friend of mine, Dr. Doyin Salami, is a chief economic advisor. And like I always said, it is one thing to advise, and another thing for that person being advised to take that advice. If you advise and the person who is supposed to take the advice spawns those advice, your advice becomes useless. You are not an executive. You don't have power to make decisions and execute. But second issue, if you also cast your mind back, and I'm talking about the history of this country, so that we already have proof of concept we can replicate. 2015 election, 6 weeks a few weeks to the election, then President Jonathan postponed the election by 6 weeks and engaged mercenaries to push back Boko Haram. Within 6 weeks, Ruben, if you recall, you were in government then. We were able to, the country was able to push back mercenaries out of most of the local government that had foisted their flags. And we could hold election in 2015. So the government can also take a decision. Look, the capacity of the Nigerian military, their operational structure, their motivations have been weakened. So whatever support we need, get it for them. Let's give the next 2 months and push back the terrorists so that agricultural activities can resume in some of the northwest, north central, and northeast communities. If we have restoration of agricultural production in those communities, our demand for food will reduce, inflation will reduce, and because the demand for some of these items will reduce, then our demand for importing some of those items will also reduce. We need to do that. You know, you observe that I never talked about the government, the monetary authorities trying to increase rates to bring in foreign capital, because it won't happen. Foreign capital is going to sit on the fence until after the election. If Nigerians make the right choice and elect a proper and effective leader, then capital flow will resume.
Okay, thank you very much. High Chief Johnson Chukwu for joining us on this.
The chief is Lugbe, not in Lagos.
No, but you are a chief everywhere, aren't you?
Well,